how to use pivot tables in Google Sheets with a practical example to solve a real problem. I'm using here a dataset that you can download for free. Just click in the link in the description, and then I'm going to take this dataset and transform into pivot tables to help me analyze the data, to reorganize the data and make analysis. This is what the pivot table can help us with, to create analysis in an easier and faster way than use functions and formulas. And as you can see here, I'm using different pivot tables to different analysis. And basically we have 4 different options when we are talking about pivot tables. We have fields such as rows, columns, values, and also filters. We're going to see here each one of these different fields in this video, step by step from scratch. So I hope this video can help you out, and let's find out how can we create those pivot tables using Google Sheets. Let's go. The first thing that you need in order to create the pivot tables using Google Sheets is to have a dataset. And you can download this file for free. Just click in the link in the description down below. That way you can follow with me this step by step using exactly the same data set that I'm using here. But you don't need to. If you want to use your own data, you can do. It's going to work in the same way. Okay? The important thing is we need to have some type of information to use in the pivot tables and to create the analysis that we're going to use here. In talking about the data set, basically I have here a delivery report with information such as the order date, the purchase date, the quantity, the dispatch date, the delivery date, the state name, freight cost, and the payment method. Okay. Now, how can the pivot table help us with this data set? What the pivot table can do for us? So let's say the pivot table can help us to slice and dice the data. Okay, I know it's something more abstract, and I'm going to show you here in a practical way how the pivot table can help us. So let's say I ask you this question. What is the total freight cost? You can basically take everything here that you have in the total freight cost column and make an addition of all those values. That way you're going to have the total freight cost. It's a simple task to solve. But if I want to make something a little bit more specific, such as the total freight cost per state, now we have a more complex problem. And if I go further, let's say the total freight cost per state per month, January, February, March, and on and on. Now maybe we have a problem. And the pivot table can solve these questions much easier than using, let's say, functions or formulas, because it can actually reorganize the data that you have. And to create the pivot table, you just need to click in anywhere within the data, and then you can go here, insert and pivot table. Just click here. Now with this new window, I'm gonna basically have 2 different options, data range and insert to. Let's start with the data range. Here is where you can see the range that basically the pivot table selected. And my one here is from A1 up to the M352. And it's correct because my data starts in the cell A1 and goes all the way down and to the right to the cell M352. Insert to. You want to create the pivot table into an existing sheet, or you want to use a new sheet. You can choose those options. I'm going to stick with the first one because as I only have here one sheet, I will not place the pivot table in this same sheet. So I want you the pivot table. Basically here, the Google Sheets create a new sheet for me, and that way place the pivot table there. So we're going to stick with this option right here, new sheet. Let me click here, create. And now we're going to have 2 different things going on here in the screen. The first one is here to the left, and the second one is here to the right. To the left, we have the pivot table itself, where we can see our data or analysis. And here to the right, we have where we can slice and dice, where we can reorganize our data. To the right, we have the columns that we have, order date, purchase date, product ID, and on and on. And here we have basically the fields of our pivot table, rows, columns, values, and filters. So let's say, as I said before, I want to know what is the total freight cost. Freight cost, what is the total? If I make an addition of all those values, what is the total value? I can basically take here, click, hold, and drag the freight cost and drop just underneath here the values. Okay, like this. And now I'm going to have here a sum of all the values that corresponds to the total freight cost column. Okay. And if I go here to the left, I can see the total value, $23,000, almost $24,000. And let's say if you want to read it off, this information here, you can basically click here in this cross sign to close the option. And to insert another option or to insert the option again, you can click, hold, and drag in any options that you have here to the right and drop underneath those fields, or you can click here, add. It's gonna work in the same way. So let's say I'm gonna add again the total freight cost. I want to know this calculation. So I can type in here freight. I can select, click, and yeah, that's it. So it's the same thing. If you click, hold, and drag and drop, or if you click here, add, and choose the option, and we're gonna have here the same result. Another interesting thing that we can have here is to use rows or columns. Let's say I want to have more specific analysis here. So in each one of the rows, I want to have a state name, and I want to know the total freight cost for each one of the states, or the total freight cost per state. I can take here also the state, where is it here, state name, click, hold, and drag and drop underneath the rows like this. As you guys can see, now I have each one of the states, and each one of the values responds to the states itself that are matching the state. And in the last row right here, I have also the grand total. So basically the same value as before, almost 24,000. So it's proof that it's perfectly correct, and the values are matching. So this is the first pivot table that we can create here. If I want to add, let's say, another pivot table, and I know that we are still missing here two different fields, columns and filters, we're gonna use it. I want to create a new pivot table here. To create a new pivot table, I need to go back to my report, and again, I'm gonna click in anywhere, and then anywhere within the data, okay? I'm gonna click here, insert pivot table, and now instead of using new sheet, I'm gonna use existing sheet because I want to place this new pivot table, let's say, to the right of the one that I already have. So let's click here, existing sheet. I need to input here the placement of my new pivot table. So I'm gonna click here in this little icon, click here, then I'm gonna choose pivot table 2, and I'm gonna select a cell, maybe this one right here, D1, okay? It's correct. Let's click OK. Okay, create. And yeah, now we have a new pivot table. And this one, maybe want to have something different. That is, can be, let's say, the payment method. I can click here, click, hold, and drag underneath the columns option. Now each one of the columns corresponds to a payment method, cash, credit cards, and on and on. And you can also change the order. So if you want to organize it from A to Z, you can choose an option that corresponds to A to Z or Z to A, and on and on. So I have ascending and descending. Let's choose descending here just to change. Okay, now the order is inverted. I'm gonna stick with this option. And now as the values, I can maybe take, let's say, the payment method again. So I can click here and drag underneath the values. And maybe you can think with yourself, how can you use a text that is payment method as the values? So look, when we are using a text as the values, if you take here back to the report, what basically I'm doing is, if I'm using the payment method as the value, the pivot table is going to count each time that each one of the payment methods appears. That way we can have, let's say, what is the payment method was the one that was choose the most, and the one that was choose the least. So let me come back here to the pivot table, and this is exactly what the summarize by option here is doing. So it's not doing a sum because it makes no sense to sum text, but basically we are counting every time that a specific payment method appears. And that way I can have here which of the payment methods are choose the most and choose the least. And then grand total, I have 351. So basically it's because it indicates to me that I have 351 total orders. And one way to check if this number is correct, maybe as the value of the first pivot table, we can also use the column C, let's say, to create a new column. And here we can have how much orders that we have for each one of the states. So let me click here in the first pivot table to just select now the settings for this pivot table. And as the value, I want to add another option. Instead of click, hold, and drag underneath here, I want to use this add option just to make it different. And here I want to count each one of the orders that I have. So I can use, let's say, state name. So let's click here, state name, and I want to use summarize by counting of those values. And yeah, it's perfect. And as you guys can see here, Alabama 17, Alaska 21, and on and on. But the final result here, the grand total is equal to 351, and it's matching with the previous value that you have here, 351. So you can see that it's correct. because we have the exactly same number, even though we are doing different analysis. And the last but not least important option that I want to use here as the fields is the filter. Let's see how can we use the filter. But for the filters, I want to click here in the second pivot table that I have, and then I can go here to the filters. And let's say, instead of see here all the values that I have, I just want to see the values corresponds to the January month. So I can take, let's say, the order date or also the purchase date. Let's take the order date, click, hold, and drag underneath the filters. And instead of showing all items, I want to change it and show only the months that corresponds to the January month. So let me select here, clear all, and I only want to add here the January. 01 / and select everything, and then I can click here, OK, and I'm basically done. Now the values that are appearing here for me are the values corresponds to the January only. It's not about the whole year, but just from a specific month. So this is how we can create a pivot table using Google Sheets, using all the different options, fields that we have, such as rows, columns, values, and filters. I hope this video can help you out. And if you have any questions, any suggestions to the next videos, let me know, comment down below, and I see you tomorrow. As every day has a new video, I see you there.